What up? So I'm making a new Agario private server video. It's going to be pretty much over the exact same thing the last video was, but I'm going to go into a little more detail this time, kind of explain some things a little more in depth. Also, I'm going to show you a little bit on how to troubleshoot your server if it doesn't work after you've done everything. The only thing I'm not going to go back over is port forwarding. I'm just going to give a link to a pretty good port forwarding website. I'll put that in the description below, and that's got some good guides on how to do it. If you want to watch me port forward my router again, I'm just going to link back to the other video where I've already done that. But I'm just going to jump right into this. So we need only 3 things to get this server to work. We need our Ogar private server. I'll show you how to get that, as well as Node.js. And we'll have to just extract the folder that we download for our Ogar server and install Node. Now optionally, I'm going to show you how to get Notepad+. This just allows you to edit your server files a little bit easier. Instead of just looking through a jumble of one string of text, this will actually break it out into a way that's much easier to look at, much easier to edit. So the steps we're going to do is we're going to download our Ogar server, download Node.js and install it, and then we're also going to have to install Node into the correct server, or to the correct folder, which is where our server is located. After that, we'll edit our Ogar or Agario private server ports and start the server up. Now optionally, we can customize our Ogar server and port forward our router if we want external connections to it. Then after that, I'll go into troubleshooting, which few main things that'll stop this server from working is your firewall blocking port that you chose for your server, and port forwarding on your router not set up. And another one here that is blocked by my sticky notes thing is command prompt errors, which you can get sometimes while trying to change your directory and install Node. So let's just get right into getting these files. So if we go just right into Google Chrome here and we Google Ogar, then this top link, at least on mine, is ogarproject/ogar at GitHub. If we click on that, this is what I'll have a link to in the description, and you just click download zip here on the right side. And this will download the server files in a zip format, so we're going to have to extract that to get it to work. Now mine puts my downloads right in my user folder under downloads, so I'm just going to go here, right click on Ogar master that we just downloaded, and click extract all, and then click extract again. So this takes the files out of the zip folder and puts them into a normal folder. If you don't do this, this is where you'll get probably a lot of errors. Your server is not going to start. You won't be able to install Node into the server folder because the folder technically doesn't exist. It's still in a zip file. So if you don't extract it, you're going to run into a lot of problems later on. So if we go in to our Ogar master folder, we'll see here is some just README files. If you double click on README, now once we install Notepad+, this will be easier to read, but this has a lot of useful information if you want to read it. Now the src folder here is the one we're going to worry about. This is where we've got our main server files. So we're concerned with this file right here, start and game server configuration. So this will be the file we edit to change our server port and some other properties of the server, such as how many bots, how big we want our map to be, stuff like that. And I'll show you that later. Now the start file, when we get everything set up, you just double click that, run, and that should start up the server. Now right now it says that node index.js node is not recognized as an internal or external command. Yeah, that's because we haven't downloaded and installed Node yet. So let's do that real quick. Let's go back to Google, and if we just search for the word Node, then this one right here, node.js, which I'll also have a link to in the description. If we go here and just click install, then that'll download the installer for Node. And I'll just wait for that to download, and then we'll double click that and install it. So I'm going to go right back to my downloads folder and wait on this nice slow thing to download. Come on. Okay, so now we just double click on the installer that we just downloaded, and next, agree, next, install. So this is going to get Node ready and installed on our PC, and this will allow us to use the actual Node install command for our server folder. So once that's done, we'll be able to open command prompt and start installing this into the proper folder. Now if we go back to our server files here, double click start, just because we installed Node to our PC apparently means that it works now. This is different from the last time that I made the video for this. Last time you had to install Node to your server folder or else it wouldn't work, but now for some reason if you just install Node to the computer, somehow that works. That's kind of against what I believed before, but that works now. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to install Node directly under that folder if for some reason this is just some kind of weird thing that happens on my computer, and if you download Node and install it and it still doesn't work on your computer, you'll probably want to follow these steps, which is opening command prompt. Just go to start, type in cmd and enter. So from here you're going to want to change your directory to this folder where all of the server files are. So an easy way to do this change directory command is if you right click on your start file for your Ogar server and go to properties. Right here it says location. Just start highlighting everything and it's going to go off of the page, and just go all the way over, highlight everything up to src, right click, copy. And if we go into command prompt, just type in cd space and then paste everything that you got from the server start file and then hit enter. So now this changed our directory that we're working with in command prompt to where our server files actually are. And from here, if you just type in npm space install space ws, then this will install a folder for Node modules under our server folder. So I'm pretty sure this modules thing is what it makes. If we refresh that, yeah, this is the folder that it'll put there. Pretty sure that's already there when you download the server files, but they don't always work. So just follow those steps, change directory and install Node under that folder if for some reason just installing Node on the computer doesn't work. So the fourth thing we're going to want to do is edit our port numbers. By default, this Ogar server runs on port 443, which will conflict with Skype and some other applications. So if you're using Skype, then you will get an error when you try to start your server. It'll say that the port is being used. So to change our port number, actually before we do this, I'm going to show you how to get Notepad+. Just Google Notepad+ or ++. Go to home and download. Click this download under the Notepad box. That'll download that. While I'm waiting, whoa, there we go. While I'm waiting on that, I'm just going to go ahead and install it from the file I've already got downloaded on my desktop. So just next through everything, agree, next, don't check any of those, install. So now we've got Notepad+, and what this does is if we right click on our game server file and go to edit with Notepad++, then it'll pop this pretty window up. So it separates everything into an easy to see format. If we just opened this with Notepad, it would look like this, and this is a pain to try and find what you want to do in the midst of all of this text. So Notepad+ is very good to have. So to change our port number, right here on line 12 of this configuration file, it says server port equals. So we're just going to delete 443 and throw in just some kind of arbitrary number. I use 14441, and then we can save this, and our server will run on port 14441. Now there is a limit to what your numbers can be. It has to be 1 through, I think it's 65,500 35 or something. So you just have the whole range of TCP port numbers to work with, and I would recommend using a port number over 12,000, somewhere around there or over, because that gives you the least chance of it being blocked by some kind of firewall or not working. If you use a really low port number, then you run the risk of that being a well-known port and being used by some other application that is blocked by default. So that's how we change our port number. And if we double click on start after saving that, then it'll show us right here, game listening on port 14441. Now it also says that stat server is on port 88. We don't need to change that. That doesn't conflict really with anything, and I'm not even sure what it does. So we don't have to change that port number. But this one that says listening on port 14441, we need to change that. So now our server is running, and to connect to it, we just go to agar.io. And there's two ways that we can connect to our private server, and that's either by using a browser extension called Agario Server Browser, which I'll put a link to in the description. I already have it running here. So to connect to it, the stuff you have to type in is first ws : and then 2 forward slashes, and then the IP of the computer you installed your server on. So to find the IP of your computer, go back to command prompt by clicking start, typing in cmd, enter. The command is ipconfig, ipconfig. And just press enter, and you will get your local computer's IPv4 address. So right here where it says IPv4 address, off to the side we've got 192.168.1.178. So this is the IP address of this computer, which is the computer that I installed my server on. So that's what we need to use. So .178, type in ws : 2 forward slashes 192.168.1.178, and then another colon, and this is where you put your port number. So 1444, I used 1, right? Yeah, 1. And if we click play as guest, then this will connect us to our private server. So right here you can see that the leaderboard, I'm the only one on it, because I'm the only one in this private server right now. Now another way to connect to your private server, this is an easier way if you don't want to download and install the browser extension. If you just type in agar.io / equals, oh not equals, / IP equals 192.168.1.178, IP address of your server machine, port number, so 14441. And this will just take us straight into our private server where we can name our cell Bob, play as guest, and we're right back in our private server. So that's 2 ways to connect to it. There used to be a third, which I'm not going to show you because for me it doesn't work anymore, and it's a little bit more complicated. So this way I think is the easiest, where you just type this in the address bar. Now let's see, what did I have next? So now we've set up the server, installed it, connected to it, played a little bit of Agario. Optionally, we can customize our server. So this game server configuration file here, right click, open with Notepad+. This is where you can change pretty much all of your server properties. So right here we've got our server max connections. This is how many people can be connected to it at once. This also includes bots, which is right down here, server bots 0. If we change that to, we'll say 80 server bots, which is nuts. If we have 80 server bots, only 64 of them are going to be able to run, and when we try to connect to the server, we won't be able to get in there because each bot will use up a connection for the server. So you always want to have your max connections high enough to where people will still be able to get in, but it's not going to overwhelm the server, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to set this up, kind of change server bots to 10, and I'll have max connections of 70, so we can have up to 60 real players play on this at the same time with our 10 bots. Server game mode, this is where you can change the game type of your server. Now if you want to know what to change this to, go under the server folder, Let me find mine again. Downloads, Ogar master, Ogar master. So one of these readme, actually the readme file, if you go into that, down here there is a table that gives the ID numbers for which game types. So we've got free-for-all, which is 0, that's what ours is set to. Teams, experimental, tournament, Hunger Games, zombie mode, Team Z, Team X, and rainbow free-for-all. And then these numbers are what we would put into our server to tell it to use that different game type. So if we wanted to do teams, then in our server configuration file, we would change that to 1. Instead of having a 0 here, we'd put 1. Now our game server will boot with the team game mode. But I'm going to keep mine at 0. And I just keep going down here. Server view, this is just how big the view window is. I leave all of that the same all the time. Here's this server stats port, never change that. Border, this will make the actual map bigger. The only ones you'll change is border right and border bottom. I think the real legit Agario servers use a number somewhere around 11,000. So to make this a legit map size, just change both of these to somewhere around 11,000. And then here's the, you can change spawn times, how often how often food spawns, and how much mass you get for eating the food. So let's see, food mass, we'll say food mass 5. So every time we eat food, we're going to get 5 mass instead of the normal 1. And virus amounts, this is the minimum amount of viruses for the map, maximum amount for the map, virus start mass. So if we change this to like something nuts, say a virus minimum amount of 50 and a maximum amount of 200, then we can have, it'll start with more viruses, and we can have more viruses later if we make them while playing. And then down here we've got our player masses. So player maximum mass, this is how big you can get. Change that to something higher if you want to be able to get way bigger. Change it to something lower if you don't want people to get that big. Player minimum mass eject, this is when you shoot your mass out in front of you. This is how much minimum that it'll shoot out, and then this is the minimum mass that you need to split. So you can change this to lower if you want to be able to split at a lower mass, higher if you want people to have to split at a higher mass. Maximum cells, I don't actually know. Oh wait, yeah, that's after you split. You can only split up to where you have 16 separate cells, if that makes sense. So change this number if you want people to just roll around with hundreds of their own dots. And there should be a decay. Player minimum mass decay is 9. If you turn this off, then it, or change it to 0, that effectively turns it off, and you won't lose mass just from running around. So by default, if you don't eat anything and you just run around, you will slowly lose mass. And if you change that, then you won't, or you'll lose more if you change that to a higher number. Then you've got some other stuff like player disconnect time and maximum nickname length. If you just look through this, they're pretty much all self-explanatory, and you just change the numbers to customize it to however you want it to play. So I'm going to save this with our 10 bots and bigger map size and food with a mass of 5. Now every time you change something, you're going to need to exit out of your server that's already on and restart it. So if we double click on start again, then right here it says that we've loaded it with 10 player bots. So if we go back to Agario and play, then this will be our new settings. So let's see, agar.io / I'll just go down here. I already typed that in, don't feel like doing it again. Play as guest with the name of Bob. And you can see here on our leaderboard we've got 10. And these names are getting pulled from a bot name file, which I'll show you in 1 second. You can change the names of the bots on your server. But you can see that our food dots are a little bit bigger, because each time they're giving us 5 mass instead of 1. And our actual map size is bigger, but I'm not going to show you that because that'll take forever to get from one side of the map to the other. So the file that it pulls bot names from, once again, it's under your server file. What is this? Oh, I clicked on the, I wasn't even on this computer. Okay, so under Ogar master src, here we have a notepad file that's called bot names. So if we open that up, then this is just a list of 53 names that it'll choose at random. So if we delete all of these default names and just put in some of our own, so if we do like James, hello, Bobby, Ricky, hi, we'll do Doug because I like that one. So we need 10 names. Let me think of some others. Ben, Ethan, Timmy, Turk. Alright. So we've got 10 names here, and if we save this file and reboot our server, then they'll pull those names instead of the default ones that were in there before. So exit that, and you can see in the background we've faded down to gray. It says connecting because our server's not running. Let's double click start. After a little bit it'll just automatically connect to some other server, but I started it in time, so let's just refresh the page. We'll come in as Bob again, play as guest, and now you see that on the leaderboard we've got our custom names. Okay, so that's just pretty much how to get it to work and customize it a little bit. Let's go to last thing, port forwarding. Alright, if you want to port forward, I'll put a link to this website again in the description, but if you just Google port forwarding, then it should have a link to a website right here, portforward.com. If you want some good guides on how to port forward your specific routers, come here. And if we go down to port forward guides, free guides, then we can select the make and model of our home router. So for me, as an example, I have a BT home hub. So if we go to B's, BT as the manufacturer, it's going to pop up this add thing. Just close it. We don't need that. And scroll down to your model. So for me, I have a home hub 4. If I just click on home hub 4, then this should give me some guides. So you can look for a guide for specific games. If you go through all those, Agario is not on here, so don't look for it. But right here it says if you do not see the program you are forwarding ports for, then you can try checking out our default guide for this router. So if you just click on default guide, then this will give you a nice laid out with pictures guide on how to port forward your router, which this is exactly what I did in my last video. So if you have a BT Home Hub 4, you can check that out yeah, on my last video. So there's where to get guides on port forwarding. And that is needed if you want your friends to connect to your server that are outside your house. And I guess I can just go ahead and tell you what to do once you do that. If you Google what is my IP, it'll give you it'll pop up an IP address. Also, if you go to www.whatismyip.com, then that'll give you, it's what's called your public IP address, and that is the IP that you'll have to give your friends. Your friends will not be able to connect to your server using your 192.168.whatever IP address. You'll have to give them your public IP address along with the port number that your Agario server is running on. And that's the purpose of port forwarding, is so that when they try to connect to your home network from the outside, port forwarding just tells your router where to send that traffic destined for that certain port number. Because by default, your router will get traffic for an Agario server on port 14442, and it'll just think, well, yeah, I've got nothing running for port 14442, so this is obviously useless. So port forwarding just tells it that if it receives traffic for that port number, then send it on to this other computer, which is going to be the computer running your Agario server, and then your server will know what to do with traffic for that port number. Now, let's see, firewall blocking a server port. Let me just try something here, see if I can demonstrate this. I'm going to change our server port to port 69. Save and restart. It wasn't even running in the first place, so run. Okay. So if we go back to the internet and try to connect to here on port 69. Let's see. Never mind. That worked. Thought 69 would be blocked. Usually is. I'm gonna try this one more time. On port 25. Maybe my firewall is just kind of stupid. Ogar. Start the server again. And we'll try to connect on port 25. Okay, so here. So we're trying to connect to our Agario server on a new port 25. So if we look at this, it says listening on port 25, but when we try to connect to it, it just gives you a gray screen that sticks at connecting. If this happens, and it says right here, check if you have some antivirus or firewall blocking the connection. So it's pretty good chance that your firewall is blocking this on port 25, because that's a well-known port. So to get around this, click on Start and search for Windows Firewall. And just click on Control Panel, Windows Firewall. And on the left here, if we go to Advanced Settings, this will pop up another box where we can add some rules. So right here, if we go to Inbound Rules on the left side and go to New Rule, then this will give us a wizard. So let's make sure port is selected, because we're going to allow this single port 25 through. I'm going to click Next. It is a TCP port. And down here is where we type in our specific port number. So just type 25 in this box and click Next. And we're going to want to make sure Allow the connection is selected. Click Next again. And just leave all that how it is. Click Next. We're going to give it a name. So you might want to put like Agario private server. You can give it a description if you want, but this is just so when you look back through your firewall rules and you see it, you know what this rule is for. And finish. So this allows port 25 in through our firewall. Now we might want to do out. I don't think we need to, but let's refresh this. Bob. And it's still not working. Okay. So let's try to add an outbound rule to our firewall. Outbound rules. Whoop. New rule. It's going to be the same thing. Port. Next, TCP, port 25, next, allow the connection, next, name, just going to say Agario, and finish. Make sure that that was in our inbound rules. So Agario private server. If we go to properties of that, just kidding, I don't want to look through there. Let's refresh this again. Actually might have picked a port that my router blocks, so yeah. There is a way to tell whether your computer or your router is blocking the port, because sometimes it'll be hard to tell. I know that my router, I'm sure, blocks port 25, so this probably just isn't going to work. Yeah, we're still connecting. So if you want to figure out if your computer is blocking it, then backspace over this 192 IP address, take that out and type in 127.0.0.1. This is called a loopback IP address. This will not touch the rest of your network. Whoop. Bob. That doesn't work. So our computer definitely is blocking this, and I don't know why these rules aren't working. They usually do. Let's just turn the firewall off. Windows Firewall, turn on or off. I'm going to turn Windows Firewall off on both of those. I'll just click OK. Windows Firewall's turned off. Don't do this, please. It's not good to turn your firewall off. And it doesn't even work for this anyway. So I'm just going to say don't use port 25. I thought I'd be able to unblock it, but you see how to unblock port numbers. Just try that if you still can't connect to it. Port 25 I know is it's a bugger of a port. Yeah, I don't know why that didn't work, but the good news is the easiest way to get around this is just to change your server port number. So if you have a port that doesn't work, change it to something really freaking high. Let's go with 15,500. If you run into problems with your port, just change your port number. You can unblock and do all that, but this is just so much easier to do. And when we come back 15500, then it's working again. So, moral of that story, save yourself some time. Don't mess around with the firewall, just change your port numbers. But if you need to unblock it in the firewall, then I just showed you how to do that. Okay, port forwarding not set up, I'm not going to get into that. Command prompt errors. Since Node kind of just installs itself now, you probably won't run into very much of this, but if you do get an error like, what is it, file or directory doesn't exist, then, well, I already showed you how to get around that. You right click on your server file and make sure you highlight this, copy paste that in there after the CD, and that'll get around that. But command prompt is very case and syntax sensitive, so if we just go into command prompt and we want to do a CD and you just type like C:, users / test, system cannot find the path specified. That's just because you have the wrong syntax. So if we do CD C:, users / test, then that will actually change our directory, which is the directory we're in, so that's kind of unfair. / downloads there. So if you misspell anything or just use the wrong syntax, you're going to get an error in command prompt. But that's the main one that I've seen people comment about. Just take it from the location if you even need to. Like I said, Node.js kind of just works now for some reason. I don't know why. If it breaks in the future, if it doesn't work for you, then you're going to need to use that command, and copying and pasting from your start file is the easiest way to get it to work. Just make sure that you've already typed in CD and a space before you do it. Let's see, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's really simple once you've done it before. I mean, really all you have to do is download this file, extract it into a folder, and then install Node, and then hit start. That's pretty much all you have to do. Where trouble comes in is when you're trying to get your friends to play and your friends are at their house. Then you get into port forwarding and port blocking and all that. Really just play with your port number a little bit, try to find one that's high and isn't blocked, and then follow the guides for port forwarding your router, and you should be good. As long as you give your friends your public IP address with your port number, then you'll be fine if they can type it in right. Just remember that agar.io / IP equals IP address port number. And I'm going to put all of these commands and stuff in the description, as well as probably some annotations, but hopefully there's not as many questions on this. I know a lot of people were talking about their server not working with, like, they can't see their cell, or their cell is just a big blob of black squares. If that happens, honestly, I don't really know what to tell you, because this way is how I got around that happening to me. So just keep trying to download the server files. Make sure you're downloading the server files from that GitHub place. Make sure it's the actual official GitHub for the Ogar server, and not like, I know there is another version out there somewhere, but just use the link in the description, and that's what you need to download. So once again, if you have any questions on this, feel free to leave a comment or just email me directly at toastyanswers@gmail.com, and I'll get back with you. The only thing that I really don't know how to fix is if your cell pops up as a black square. I don't have a fix for that. So thanks for watching, and hopefully this stuff works for you guys.